Ladies and gentlemen, it's now time for us to go straight to the first panel session for today. First, I want to make welcome the moderator for this session. Can we please specially appreciate with a round of applause the Group Chief Technical Officer, Pan Ocean New Cross Group, and immediate past president of the Nigerian Association of Petroleum Explorationists. Please help me jam your hands together for another amiable scholar, Dr. Abiodun Ogunjobi. Can we please celebrate him? Thank you very much. Please have your seat, sir. Joining him for this panel, I want to invite Engineer Bassey. Let's celebrate Engineer Bassey, the Executive Officer and CEO, Africenergy and Infrastructure Limited. Thank you, sir. Please have your seat, Engineer Bassey. Thank you. And also joining Engineer Bassey is Engineer ThankGod Egbe. Can we please jam our hands together for him? Gentlemen, please test the microphones beside you. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. I've been told that one of the panelists will be joining virtually. Can we just confirm? Can we please confirm if he's ready? Dr. Victor Ekpenyong will be joining virtually from the United States of America. You know, we have different time zones. He just might be... He's awake. He has to be awake. He has to be awake. Victor Ekpenyong, can you hear us? He's there. He has been on standby for hours. Can we please appreciate him with a round of applause? Thank you very, very much. All right, sir, your time starts now.
Good morning, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's been an interesting and exciting moment since yesterday when the conference started. And this morning we have had three erudite speakers that have taken us the journey of expectation on what we stand to benefit from the Africa Energy Bank. Africa is at a critical junction now, where energy landscape is not only viewed as a transitional fuel, but is more like a destinational fuel for us to make a bridge to our industrialization and take the Africans out of the energy poverty that we have all been talking about. And the coming of Africa Energy Bank is something that Africa in general has been clamoring for a very long time, and eventually is now here with us. So the whole nexus of today's conversation is on how we can take advantage and the benefit of African Energy Bank to industrialize African continent. And today we'll be listening once again to our panelists and taking a clue from the three speakers that we have had talk this morning on some of the critical steps that we need to take as Africans. And we know that even though we have over 600 TCF of untapped natural gas, a lot of the speakers have talked about what we have. We are more of a gas country than oil, but most unfortunately, our gas has always been a byproduct of our search for oil. You know, there has not been strong, aggressive, exploration and exploitation activities targeting towards gas, and we are getting there very shortly. So we have realized that streamlining our procurement, such as our compressors, the LNG equipment, infrastructure deficit that we have is critical to achieving that goal of industrialization of Africa. So Africa Energy Bank will play a complementary role, and they will also need to work in collaboration with the government. So there has to be a collaborative role between the Africa Energy Bank and the government to de-risk investment and also enforce local content requirement. So together, both the government, the stakeholders, and the Africa Energy Bank, we can de-risk the barrier of capital. We know that two major obstacle that we have to industrialization is the infrastructure deficit that we have and also the limited capital that we have. So the objective is to explore the critical collaboration between the African Energy Bank, the government, and on how to create innovation and domestication of technology in Africa. So Africa will be developed by Africans. And that is the slogan that we all need, to imbibe. We will not expect anybody from outside the country to develop Africa for us. I'll give you an example why Africa must innovate and domesticate our technology. When many of us were going up from the universities, the most destination university of core for petroleum geosciences and petroleum engineers is usually Imperial College in London. Everybody wants to go to Imperial College. But as of 2020, 2021, Imperial College stopped teaching petroleum geosciences. By 2021, 2022, they dropped petroleum engineering as a course. So meaning that the knowledge base that we want to get from there is no longer there because they have moved their curriculum to renewables and they want to develop more of renewables. So for Africa, we need to innovate and domesticate the technology. So I'm going to start by just allowing our panelists to give their own overview, looking at the current state of procurement for natural gas in Africa. Are we in the state of evolution or revolution? How do we acquire the necessary technology and hardware? So just give your perspective to the three presentations we've had, and how do you think this decade of gas that has been declared by the government, what are the biggest?
Very slimly that the pricing of gas has to be thoroughly regulated across the continent. The second part is counterpart risks. What I mean by counterpart risks is you have maybe A and B doing a business on gas, and they are not fulfilling their obligation in terms of memorandum of agreement, whereby you have gas products to be delivered at point A across a continent, and the other person is not fulfilling their own obligation. That can be a problem. So the counterpart must firm up on a pure and clean understanding. I normally call it memorandum of agreement, whereby both parties must work on deliverables to keep Africa the way we want it. The third is, in this procurement process, will be for us to look at the regulatory compliance, the regulatory framework within the institution. Are we doing enough to push gas, not merely putting PIAs that are not firm? Is this PIA going to cut across the continent if we're looking at putting up African Energy Bank? Country A might differ from country B in Africa. So we need to look at all of this critical network to be sure that compliance and regulatory framework cut across the borders, not just Nigeria. Yes, we can be the hub, and we are thinking of making sure that gas becomes our tool, making sure that the compliance network must be implemented and must be tailored to intensify the region, so that if African Energy Bank comes to sit, the process of procurement will be made easy. Thank you.
Thank you. Engineer ThankGod, we are decade of gas. From a procurement standpoint, what do you think are the biggest gap? And how do you see African Energy Bank bridging those gaps?
Okay. Thank you. Not sure if this is working. Can you hear me?
Okay. You can blow into it. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you, moderator. And then just to appreciate Engineer Emeka, Dr. Emeka Okafor again for putting this together, and the rest of the organization, organizing committee working on this. It's really very exciting to be here. I would like to look, of course, you mentioned the two major things that the decade of gas should tackle, which are the two major drawbacks to driving innovation and technology, is basically infrastructure and financing. You mentioned that, And like I said, I work in 3 institutions, in Cyphercresent, in Triple Helix, as well as University of Port Harcourt. I'm looking at it from the Triple Helix perspective, where we look at Vision 10. This actually aligns with the Vision 10-10-10 of Triple Helix, which is about 10 universities having 10% equity in 10 listed companies. In fact, 10 unicorns, building 10 unicorns in the next 10 years. How can we, the decade of gas, drive that? Africa Energy Bank drives that. We recognize that and look at it in terms of there are 4 critical pillars that you need to actually industrialize the country, irrespective of the sector. It was recognized from a Triple Helix perspective. The first pillar is a pillar of entrepreneurial orientation. Mrs. Lokoma actually presented that I mentioned about capacity building. All the 3 speakers mentioned that capacity building, which we call, first of all, entrepreneurial orientation. It means that we should develop capacity, we should change our mindset to recognize that we as Nigerians can do this. The second pillar is a collaboration pillar. How can industry and academia collaborate together to drive innovation? How do we change our curriculum? How do we align our curriculum to drive that? And then the third pillar, which is the pillar of infrastructure, is basically one of the most challenging of all of them to pick up that. How much infrastructure do we have to drive innovation? You go across the country, you can actually list out all the infrastructure that we need to drive innovation. Somebody wants to do an experiment in Port Harcourt. He's traveling to Zaria with bad roads and so on. I can't even find any of them to manage that. How much money does he have? So, and most of those infrastructure are actually dated 20, 30 years ago infrastructure to drive innovation. So we need to basically, like I said, build very strong collaborative infrastructure that will pick up that. And luckily, the theme of the next Triple Helix conference in 2026 is about building collaborative infrastructure to manage that. And Africa Energy Bank can support that infrastructure building. And then the 4th pillar of industrializing a country, irrespective of the sector, is basically the financing, innovation financing. How do you manage that? So if you look at it from the Africa Energy Bank perspective, they can play a dual role. The role of an investor and the role of a venture capitalist, where they can invest in a lot of innovative ideas to manage, like I said, to actually get a pilot for a gas-to-liquid technology is about $100 million to manage that. How strong will the commercial bank manage that? So if you have an African Energy Bank that have the might to manage that, you should build 2-3 pilots. It's just a GTL pilot. And talk about commercializing that. Those are billion-dollar projects to manage that. And also, the African Energy Bank can also be like an investor where investors from other countries or outside the country can come in and put up their money inside African Energy Bank to invest that, because they will help in de-risking that. Most of the time, investment is about de-risking it. So if we are serious about industrializing a country, industrializing a continent, is basically we need to put up dedicated finance to manage that. So that's where the role of Africa Energy Bank comes in to manage that. So through 4 pillars, but basically the pillar of funding, the pillar of knowledge development, and it takes a lot to basically train people. We talk about training. So training can be done from the university, can even go down to secondary schools to drive that. How do we put up that? NCDMB is doing a very good job in terms of capacity building, and that was possible because of the Nugget Act of 2010. How could we work with government?
Recording stopped.
How do we work with government to get similar policies to drive that? So for me, I believe that if you have Africa Energy Bank to industrialize the country, is basically to put dedicated funds into funding innovation, dedicated funding into funding infrastructure, not for a particular unit, but regional infrastructure hub, where you spend a lot of money, where people around that region can go back there and look at infrastructure, and also looking at it in terms of the mindset of the Africa Energy Bank should be the mindset of technology development. It shouldn't be the mindset of technology procurement. The procurement is basically we get finished product to come in. If you look at the mindset of technology development, who should head the bank? Who should head the R&D part of the bank? What the mindset of doing that? That's basically what we need to look at. So if we get that done, we put up infrastructure and put up a very small act that will be able to drive startup, that will be able to help to industrialize the country, leveraging finance.
Thank you. I know you are very passionate about entrepreneurship and innovation. So I'm going to come back later on startup in the energy space, because I know we have done pretty well in other sectors that has not energy. Then why is it difficult for us to have startup in the energy space? If you take a look at the fintech, we've done pretty well as a country in the fintech, the likes of Paystar, the likes of Flutterwave. Flutterwave, today, their market valuation is about $3 billion. There is no commercial bank in Nigeria that has market value of $3 billion. The closest is GTCO, which is about 2.4 billion. So you can see how a Nigeria startup is able to mature to $3 billion. The startup value of Africa Energy Bank is about 5 billion, with an ambition to be 120 billion in 5 years. So you can see Energy Bank is starting at 5 billion. Already we have a Nigerian company that is already 3 billion. How can we not have many more of Flutterwave, of Paystar? But we'll come back to that later on. Let's see if we can have Dr. Ekpenyong to give his opening perspective. Dr. Ekpenyong, are you listening to us? We'd like you to give your perspective on the role of African Bank in procurement and natural gas industry equipment and technology. Dr. Ekpenyong, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for Dr. Emeka for putting this together. Thank you, our keynote speakers. I was just carried away by the eloquence and the knowledge from Dr. ThankGod and Bassey Rex. Thank you, and my boss in NAPED. Thank you very much for being a coordinator this morning. So I'm very much delighted to be here and to speak regarding this. And I will want to draw my inspiration from historical context. We are all Africans, and one of the things that make us Africans is that we were born with challenges, and we will not either try to see how to solve some of these challenges, or we leave them the way it is. And I believe that fear of us and some people are also saddened with the opportunity to see how to solve this problem. One of the problems is procurement in oil and gas. And we know that sometimes systems are designed to function the way it is. And when we look into Africa in a larger perspective and we draw it down to Nigeria, we will now see that Africa, Nigeria were designed to be an import-based economy. Whether you are importing technology or whatsoever, food or whatsoever you want to import, that is how Africa was designed to be. And that is why even when we have what we had, whether oil, gas, and whatsoever, we see that we extract, we export, we import again and consume. And this is how it was designed to be. And you see, even the money we need for us to import, we need to borrow them. And that is why you see it's difficult for a bank in Africa, a commercial bank in Africa, to give you a loan with a very low digit, because of the money is not even available, because government is supposed to have a lot of money to inject into the economy for people to go borrow and do what they want to do. But because the money is not available and the taxes and everything, you now discover that procurement is very difficult. Let's bring back to Nigeria itself in terms of oil and gas industry. You know that Nigeria oil and gas industry have lost a lot of opportunities to be a great economy. Let's bring back maybe something like Ajaguta steel, the kind of tons of steels that they from jacket to Exmouth streets and everything. We saw how we lost that opportunity in the oil boom when Ajaguta steel was supposed to produce the steel that we need for a platform, that we need for Exmouth street, and we all import everything into the country for us to build. So you now see that the industry we built to import technology. And there is another thing I've also noticed about the industry. In terms of the investment repatriation, what I may call investing round tripping, you now see that industry, whosoever that is bringing money into the industry to invest, is coming with technology. So as the money they are bringing is hitting our, financial system, the money disappear with, technology acquisition and services. If not for the Nugget Act of 2010, that are even trying to see how to bring Nigerians out to participate. So in the entire oil and gas ecosystem right now, I think where Nigeria is only benefiting little is in the services. We are still bringing in technology, importing technology, and we are still, if not that, okay, Dangote now is coming in the processes. So in extraction, we are playing a little. In the processes, it's only recently that Dangote is trying to help us, and we still continue to consume. So the role of African Development Bank now will now be, would African Development Bank be able to attract donors or investors that will be able to bring money that Africans, and now they have that, this, perspective of that. The money we are bringing in for the development of Africa, where are they going to source the fund? That is also my worry now. Coming into African development are also going to be sourced abroad, and what is going to be the percentage? Now, China and every other country are fast developing because of low digit in terms of access to fund. A lot of people are accessing technology. If we want to build an economy that is going to focus on manufacturing and also trying to reduce import technology, we need to have access to fund. It's only when we have access to fund that there is a little bit lower digit, cheap fund, cost of fund being very, very low. That is when we can say we can import technology, and we can also use the technology to develop the oil and gas sector.
Thank you, Dr. Ekpenyong. I think the summary of what is said is how we need to domesticate procurement. Because as we are importing technology, we are also experiencing capital flight, because you need to pay for those technology, and if we can domesticate procurement, then that capital will be retained in country. And that is where African Energy Bank comes in. But let us be sincere with ourselves. African Energy Bank will not throw money at us, right? We need to have bankable projects. So African Energy Bank will not throw money at us for our procurement. So we need to have an investment that is where the risk. So let me come back to Dr. Bassey. Now, what do you think are the top 3 risks that a bank like African Energy will consider, when they want to create a tailor-made instrument to support procurement in a country like ours?
Yeah, like you rightly said, that African Energy Bank will not throw money on project. So first, they have to know that the project will be very bankable. If you, as an entrepreneur, is looking at doing any gas project, the risks that the bank will look at is, how do you pay back? That's number one. So how do you pay back? You, as an entrepreneur, you have the vision, you have the mindset, you have the passion. All that can just be paperwork. What really matters most is, yes, you can have a good idea. Even in Nigeria today, typical Nigerian bank will not even throw money at you. So their first trick is your project bankable? The second is it environmentally friendly? What do I mean by environmentally friendly? You, as an entrepreneur, you want to run a business. You go to a certain community, you set up all your gadgets, set up all your, technology, your passion. You started doing all of this. An investor comes in and wants to take on that project. The next day, the community turns it down. You'll be shocked. It happens in Nigeria. So is it environmentally friendly? That's why we need government to create that enabling environment So they will look at that as a key factor. The third, which is also very, very, very serious, is are they willing to share the risks? Are they willing to share the risks? You know, people will just say, I have a brilliant project. Oh, this project has been on. I'll use myself as a typical example. I'm doing a modular refinery. Yeah, somewhere in my state. A typical Nigerian bank, I was so excited that, wow, this vision is bankable. Bringing the experts to do business plan, look at the return of investment. We're all on paper. We got to the bankers. Oh, yes, it's a fine project. It's very bankable. The next they ask is collateral. Yes, collateral. And you'll be wondering what collateral. Oh, I have a land. How much is your land? It's a green project. So we need to work together to make sure that there are policies that can direct the fact that people, as entrepreneurs, can really make the project come to fruition. So these are the risks that they will look at. That we need to know that African Energy Bank coming together in Africa will not throw money on us. So they have to know that the project is bankable. They have to also know that the project has that communal backup. I was talking about the refinery I was trying to put in place. The community has to be carried along. Those of us that worked in the creek during the time of Shell, you'll be shocked. I'm just digressing a bit. When you have, for instance, a flow station, and you have a flow station attendant that is from that community, that can shut down a well, that can open a well without any training, and you have experts that are coming in to do the same thing, they are asking themselves, what is different from what this man is doing? He has the degree. I don't have it. Sometimes it will depend on them to shut the well down without even considering that they also want to share the pie. So all of this, you need to be sure that the community plays a major role in making sure that your project, flies. So it will be good for us to think that African Energy Bank is a good, hub that will come and put things in place for us, but we also need to get a bankable project that they see that is not risky. I think that will make a lot of sense for people that want to go into business. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And to be told, security has delayed a lot of projects in the Niger Delta.
Correct.
And for any project to be bankable, then there has to be some kind of collaboration between the government and the institution that is providing the fund to incorporate some risk insurance into the procurement contract that can mitigate some of these risks. So as long as we continue to operate in a volatile environment like ours, one of the things that a financial institution like Africa Energy is to understand the environment and be able to put in place some financial risk instrumentation that will support financing projects in an environment like ours, like insurance, policy that can go along with the project. But I got your point. Is some of the risk mitigate for them to draw finances from an institution like African Bank. Thank you. So let me come back to you, Dr. ThankGod. And like I said, I like your passion about innovation. In your presentation, you listed some critical equipment investment profiles, that a startup can venture into. Then my question to you is that we have done this very well outside the energy space. We've done it, I gave the example of the fintech. I remember one of the talk of Professor Lumumba of Kenya, that if you get into any country that you can't find in Nigeria, there's no life in that country. Yeah. Because when you talk of medicine, you will see in Nigeria. When you talk of fintech, when you talk of engineering, when you talk of anything, you will see in Nigeria. And Nigeria has been able to export fintech technology. Fintech, like Flutterways, is about $3 billion today. So why can't we have such in the energy hub? What are the challenges?
Okay, thank you. This has been my space for the past 25 years. When I left school as a young petroleum engineer with very strong fundamentals of mathematics, I was the one solving mathematics for a number of institutions and writing computer program. I actually wanted to be a software developer because you did 2-1 in petroleum engineering. Why not go and work in Shell, go and work in Chevron? I turned down a lot of those offers just to be an entrepreneur and was moving around writing computer program. I think my first computer program was deployed 20 years ago in EINGICE for hydrocarbon accounting. And then my first book I wrote on programming was just giving a perspective of how challenging it is. It was about 22 years ago when it was launched on Visual Basic for engineers and scientists. Used to teach computer programming, science and then computer programming across universities then. It sounded so simple as a young guy who was driven, energized to actually develop technology. I didn't want to work, I didn't apply for any job, just wanted to be a software developer. I tried that for 3 years and then that didn't go well. A couple of senior friends now told me, please, I know you are very good, you are passionate about developing software. Can you just leave what you are doing and go and join Shell? I think that was the time I actually applied for Shell and then joined Shell and said, just go and work for Shell for 3 years, anywhere, for 3 years. When you come back, come and develop software because you will understand the industry before you pick up that. So I heeded that and then left what I was doing, computer programming, to join Shell. I think I was lucky after 2 years, I was told that my skill set is really very good to go abroad to work in the headquarters. And I was time 3 years, I wanted to resign, but I was sent on cross-posting. I said, okay, as a local boy who have not gone out of the country, and I was told to go outside the country. So I went there. My challenge was basically to travel around where Shell exists to provide innovation. My first job then was in Russia. To support innovation in driving that. So after I left, finished my cross-posting, I said, I'm done, I'm going to resign to come down. I had a very strong capability to be able to drive innovation. I understood, I rose to a point of being that global subject matter expert where a lot of innovation around Shell was coming to my table around reservoir engineering aspect of integrated production system modeling. So when I left, I had not just the knowledge, I also had very strong international network. I also have friends around that came down. So when I came in to set up an energy innovation company, it was easier to look at that. So but if you look at, I'm just looking at the perspective of doing that, but that took me up to about 10 years to get to that point. But then there was no business inside. I struggled with business model for the first 3 years of running Cyphercresent to come down. But imagine a young engineer who just left school and you are telling the person to establish a company to basically provide innovation for the Shell, the Chevron, and even the Seplat. You come down. It's difficult. It's difficult because the understanding of the industry is not there. It's difficult for them to accept. You run a company in New Cross. Imagine somebody coming to you to present innovation to you. First of all, you look at it. You have $1 million asset, and the person is coming on greenhorn, and you are just looking at him. It's difficult. So what I'm driving at now is that very strong domain knowledge, understanding to manage that. I remember when I left Shell. The first month when I left, I went to make a presentation in one of the E&P companies. They had some of experts around there with a different color from us, and they were like challenging what I knew to speak about asset management. So when they finished challenging that, and I told them that by God's grace, I think I have more experience than you guys. I've worked in your country, I've led the project in a country. I listed up like 15 countries in which I've listed this thing. So they kept quiet to listen to what I had to present because I demonstrated very strong knowledge. So there's a lot of this kind of prejudice around the oil and gas industry that is difficult for young entrepreneurs to pick up. I'm coming out from the perspective of the knowledge, the domain knowledge to handle that. The domain knowledge is not there. The question will not be, are we able to equip? I left University of Port Harcourt to join Shell. I saw PVT report for the first time when I joined Shell. It gave me material balance to do. I do it very well, but I was asked to give it. I opened page 1, I see oil production volume factor, page 2, page 3, page 4. All the pages, I didn't know where to get the value to pick up that. So it means that there's a lot of disconnect, first of all, for a young engineer who is leaving the university to go and put up that. Does he have the domain knowledge? It's not there. Then the second thing we'll now look at, that infrastructure we're discussing now. It takes to pick up that. You see the Startup Act that was written to support entrepreneurship. It cannot support I've read that Startup Act, and I'm start looking at it. How do we push for a similar energy Startup Act that will actually put up the amount of investment that you need to pick up to manage that? So it's really challenging. First of all, the funding. The funding you also need. For the fintech, it's easier to explain to the common man in the street around fintech to support that. But if you want to go to the energy startup, petroleum engineering, chemical engineering, develop these things are actually challenging. And fundamentally, we're discussing about modular refinery. You want to look at gas to liquid technology, look at that. The amount of computational processes that you need to develop this thing for first principle is actually challenging. And how many persons around in the university, you have the expertise around to pick up that, you want to pick up that, you have a modeling, which university or which expert to pick up that, you don't have that. So we provide R&D support to a couple of national oil companies in Africa, and we come back, oh, please, you want to do this. The funding, you need to look at that. Do they have that? I'll need a petrophysicist to support me for 1 month. $1,500 per day I need to pay to consult that, sometimes $2,000 per day. How many of these entrepreneurs have those kind of money to look at that? So the challenges of managing this across Africa has to do with the challenge of funding, the challenge of insight. Is not different from the pillars, and that's basically what made us, when we are actually creating the pillars of Triple Helix, to industrialize a country through innovation, to look at those 4 pillars in terms of the orientation. It means that we need to actually look at revitalizing the curriculum of the universities and then bring in strong industry collaboration. I still look at it from 4 different challenges or 4 different perspectives or 4 pillars. The pillar of the orientation that they need to be able to actually support that. It goes beyond the normal knowledge you need. The pillar of the industry network collaboration that will be able to bring that industry insight, like an entrepreneur in residence, managing that. And then, of course, the biggest pillar is basically that infrastructure that you need to develop that. So it's easier to develop an e-commerce application. It's easier. When I left school, it didn't take me 1 month, 2 months to develop an application for a marginal fuel oil company on petroleum economics, because it doesn't require any strong domain knowledge. So looking at those things are the 4 pillars of financing. So much money, infrastructure deficit, collaborative network not there, and also the insights will be some of those challenges. It's something I'm passionate about. We can talk a lot about.
Thank you very much. I mean, let's appreciate our panelists. So why I'm driving that question is the fact that Africa Energy Bank is not for Nigeria alone. It's for the entire Africa. You may have the technology, and this is what I'm picking from your contribution. You may have the technology, but you must have a business model at the back of that technology to be bankable. Africa Energy Bank will not throw money around. That innovation, that technology that we want to domesticate in Nigeria, we must have a business model around it. That's what I picked from your contribution, that we should move from the era of presently technical papers to the era of adding business to our technology. And that's where we can, as a giant of Africa, being able to export those innovations to other African countries. I think which is very good for every tech hub. You know, why the fintech has been successful is because they were able to build business model at the back of their software development, and able to attract private equity investors. And that is the kind of business model that we also need in the tech space, especially in our energy hub, be able to develop a bankability of our innovation that will enable the likes of Africenergy to bank it, and even we can attract private investment. Thank you very much. So let's move on to Dr. Ekpenyong. Nigeria faces high costs of procurement today due to the volatility in our exchange rate and the fact that we rely heavily on foreign supplier for virtually all our gas industry equipment. So how can Africenergy Bank and the government mitigate this through a procurement currency hedging or regional manufacturing hub? I like when Dr. Bassey talks about the strength of instrumentation in Algeria, the strength of Angola, the storage capacity in Mozambique. So how can the government, the African government and Africenergy Bank collaborate to create first currency engine to mitigate against our fluctuating exchange rate, and also to establish regional manufacturing hubs across Africa?
Thank you very much, sir. It's on record that today over 80% of our gas industry equipment is still imported. With this volatile naira, and I'll give credence to the current administration for a little bit stability in the naira. So there is no much difference between what you see in the black market and what you see in official rate. So this because of this volatility, makes the cost of productions and procurement unpredictable and unsustainable. But if we try as much as possible to see how to invest in local productions and local manufacturing, is really going to help us to lower our focus on local materials. So what we're doing, let me just talk about our company Kenyon International. What we're doing in our company to see how to help this, before I talk about government and the bank, what we can do is that if you check us very well, you will see that our ingenuity, our services really help our country in terms of capex, in terms of most of this money that has been going out of the country. If you check, we major mostly on well controls, and before this time you see if there is any fire in the wells or anything that happened in the well, you see a lot of procurement in terms of BOP stocks and everything, flying people, shuttling plane, bringing them into the country and doing this. And because of that, you see a lot of our foreign earning used to be repatriated outside the country. But now Kenyon have invested in homegrown technology that have helped us in terms of taking out fire in the well, and not just taking out fire in the well, bringing the well under control. So this is all about building indigenous, capability. So I think that for us to change the narrative, the government, the energy banks, has to create a regional manufacturing hub. And I think this is what the NCDMB is doing. I remember that there was a place I heard it somewhere in the south side Nigeria, that the NCDMB were building something like a regional, manufacturing hub. And if the government, the banks and everybody encourage those entrepreneurs that are ready and have the innovative idea and build a regional, manufacturing hub is going to stabilize our currency risks. Like now, if there is any blowout, the companies don't need to look for $10-15 million now to look. They will quickly call Kenyon, and we have all the equipment in the country immediately. That is one of the ways that we have helped the industry and helped the government to save the forex. But if we now look into other industries like pumps, compressors, like other things that the oil and gas industry are looking for, if we can even start creating, even though it's the component in regional industrial hub, is really going to help us move the industry forward. And it's also going to help us to build a future for the next generation, for them to know that, okay, this thing can be done. For the African Energy Bank to be successful, just like you said, they have to be a viable product. What is a viable product? The innovation. What do you want to bring into the industry different from what other people are doing for them to be able to fund? For us, we said, okay, is what we call oxygen extractor, that we're going to develop something that immediately we wear into the well, it take out oxygen, and the fire will go out. Even when we didn't go to the bank to get funding, but it was an innovative idea that people look into and said, okay, this is bankable, this is what we can fund. And incidentally, also doing what they can. So I would also think that for us to move forward, let's entrepreneurs come up with beautiful, wonderful idea that is going to help the industry, and let government also look into policies that are also going to help in terms of repayment. Because one of the problems we have in this country is that there is a lot of bad debt, and people get this money and unable to pay it back. And if there is consistent policy that is also going to help the industry in terms of job creation, I will believe that we can move the country and the industry forward. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much. Please, let's appreciate it. I mean, for a country that we want to leverage on our gas resources to develop, we cannot be importing over 80% of our equipment. So kudos to NCDMB for the manufacturing hub, and I think we need more of that in the country and across all African countries, so that we can domesticate the manufacturing of this equipment and limit the capital flight that is currently ongoing. We have any question from the floor or contribution from the floor. Please let us know if you have any question or contribution that you want to make to this discourse. Any? Okay, I can see one hand there.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. Just first to thank everyone or the organizers for setting up EINGICE2025. It's been quite a learning experience for me, and I'm here with my colleague. We're from Africenergy Services. My question is largely based on the learnings from Dr. ThankGod's presentation earlier, and also Engineer Bassey as well. So I've heard quite a lot about the potential of this Africa Energy Bank, and I think it's something that should be encouraged. So given the critical role of the bank in accelerating gas infrastructure, deployment of gas infrastructure, how do you see its financing criteria encouraging efficient operatorship and brownfield optimization? Brownfield optimization, because I've also heard a bit about greenfield projects and all of that, financing, setting up new businesses, the entrepreneurial side of that. So, but for those who are in the brownfield, who have also, shown some level of competence, like for instance, Africenergy Services, we are demonstrating significant performance turnaround in improving a plant turnaround throughput and reliability for what we are operating, and we've been able to move gas processing capacity of that plant in the last 3 years from 25% of the original capacity to about 70% now. So how does AEB provide for those kind of organizations? How do we come in as persons? How do we benefit from such organizations? That's my question. Thank you.
Okay, so who would like to go first?
Okay, so I'm actually engineer, thank God. We are no moderator, calls me that. All right, so to look at brownfield development, I'll look at also, it's easier for brownfield. Like I said, my background has been that brownfield optimization in the realms of wells, reservoir and facility management. And I don't work for Africa Energy Bank. I actually just proposing ideas that they can actually pick in terms of driving innovation in the oil and gas industry. And so basically for brownfield, I look at it from the perspective of integrated production optimization or production system modeling for brownfield. It's easier in terms of business model. It's easier for brownfield once you are sure that because you have a track record of production. The question will now be what are you bringing into the table to be able to optimize production. And if you have that, what technology are you bringing? It's even easier for the operators to actually fund that. If there's a technology you are developing for that, of course, most of those technology might cost a lot of money, like the same thing we presented now. It costs a lot of money to pick up that. So some shared business model, start with business model. Once you have a very creative, when I'm developing anything today, the first thing is to look at the business model because even the technology we are developing must align with the business model to pick up that. If for process plants, okay, I want to optimize gas processing, like for brownfield, I will pick up people who have gas, they are flaring gas, and you want to develop a business model to develop a technology to actually monetize that gas, to pick up that. Once you have a very good business model, probably even the owners of the brownfield can actually support that, and also very good things from supporting Africa Energy Bank. Will they support that? But it all depends on the business model. It also depends on the forecast you want to present to manage that. But I believe that there's a lot of opportunity, especially in Nigeria, to actually support brownfield development. A lot of this, my background is the background, I belong to that school of thought then that would believe that we can actually get a 3 million barrels per day target by well intervention, wells and reservoir management, because we have a lot instead of actually jumping to drill wells. But that will come into bringing in very creative technology, because I've spent the past 15 years in the industry working on optimizing brownfields all around the world to manage that. But getting that technology depends on understanding the terrain. When you understand that terrain and develop that, of course, collaborating. I always believe in collaborating with research centers, because if we are developing technology, you will need that collaboration with that research center. And most times I've come to see that it's easier when you're approaching government, that you are going with one or two partners coming in from research institutes. They tend to trust you very well, because as you are doing that, you are building capacity to manage that. So one of the things to look at basically is that collaboration, that business model. But one of the most important things is basically to keep people with a very good mindset as the one leading the Africa Energy Bank. You have somebody with a commercial bank mindset leading that Africa Energy Bank will not move us far, because you are looking at something that will start becoming profitable in 1 month, in 2 years. And so it just does not work if you want to look at some very good technology, to look at 5 years, 10 years to pick up that. We make presentations to some investors when we started, to investors, and they're telling you to be profitable in 1 year. Of course, in 1 year, you have not conceptualized what you are trying to do, and then talk about being profitable. So that would just be my contribution from that get a very sound business model, and then also look for a very good partner. The partner can be a partner in the academia, can also be a partner in government. Government can also partner with you to drive that, and that's basically one of the things that we are pushing through Triple Helix, that individuals can partner with government. Government, they have a lot of mandate to drive a couple of things, but if your aspiration aligns with their mandate, it's easier for you to partner with them to drive that. So thank you.
Thank you very much. So just to summarize, Africa Energy Bank is not about green projects alone. is an energy bank that cuts across the entire value chain in the energy space, whether it's a brownfield or a greenfield. This company is about energy development and industrialization across Africa, right?
Okay, let me just add to, yes, really said it all. Brownfield to me is already in operation. You have deliverables, you've done your production optimization, and you're seeing around the space. Today, NCDMB has made it even easier, even in country, even before you have the African Energy Bank, which is still consolidating, to have you draw some funds. That means you have to get the right permits, you have to get the right licensing, and because you're a brownfield that has demonstrated that you have the capacity, that makes it even more easier for African Energy Bank to work with you. So that is just my contribution to what you've said, because he has spoken everything.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other one? Okay, I can see one hand there. Okay, I'll come back to you.
Yes, I'm delighted to hear about the developments regarding the African Energy Bank. I remember in 2013 when I was looking at the marginal oil field licenses and how far they were going about developing them, and I identified that finance was their main problem. Most of them just couldn't figure out what to do. So I did write an article then on marginal oil fields development, the constraints and which way to go. I think the last sentence there was that I recommended that we set up a Nigerian energy bank. But I'm happy that we're not talking about a regional energy bank. Now, we have Petroleum Stabilization Fund. And if my memory serves me right, I think we have an agency that captures that. Is it the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority? Yeah, I think so. So what would be the role of this Sovereign Investment Authority? What contribution would they be making to this African Energy Bank? And then secondly, we have the African Development Bank. I should expect that they would have an arm or a division of that bank that finances oil and gas startups, okay? So what, again, would be the contribution of African Development Bank to helping to aggregate resources for the African Development Bank? We're not talking about, looking at the scale of, for instance, how much kilometers of gas pipeline that we need to even deal with gas-based industrialization. We're talking about billions, tens of billions of dollars here. So these are not small numbers. So it's something that needs to be thoroughly conceptualized. Then lastly, other African oil-producing countries, do they also have stabilization funds? And how could these stabilization funds help in, building up funds for the African Development Bank? I'm aware that we have an association. It used to be APPA, right?
APPO.
APPO, yes, for the oil, African oil producing countries, exactly. So these things could also be discussed at that level to ensure that this concept of African Development Bank that could help to fund startups is actualized. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I know none of my panelists are representative of African Energy Bank, but I'm sure as people of interest, and we are looking at how we can prepare ourselves to take advantage of that bank. So I'm sure we can also contribute to that discourse. You know, I don't know who wants to go first, but what I can say is that, is that the 5 billion initial share capital that AEB is putting on board, about 1.5 billion is coming from the 18 African countries that make up the Apple. Then another $1.75 billion is coming from Africenergy. So, and the rest will now come from private equity investor or the rest. Just like Mrs. Legum said the other time, the federal government has already made our own contribution to the tune of $100 million initial contribution. So the rest of the 18 African countries, we also made their contribution, and the rest will come from private investors. So I'm sure government has made their own contribution to it. Thank you so much. I'm sure that is all we can take today. Please help to give another round of applause to my everyday contributor. Thank you so much, and thank you to the organizer for putting this together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, campus. I appreciate them. Please, before you leave, I want to invite Dr. Emeka Okafor for a photo with them. Please, other members of the planning committee, the chairman, and other members of the EINGICE planning committee, please join them. Thank you very, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, can we appreciate Dr. Abiodun Ogunjobi with a round of applause? Thank you. We want to say a very big thank you as well to engineer ThankGod Egbe, and also engineer Bassey, and our virtual contributor who joined us from the USA, Dr. Victor Ekpenyong. We appreciate you as well.